Hi, so here we are again. Another video, very quickly done. I'm really on fire with these still, amazingly really. But this week, it is the final in my series of videos looking at each Doctor. Possibly a blessed relief for some people, as they have gone on quite at some length. But it's a Peter Capaldi one. Unfortunately, I don't have a little Peter Capaldi toy, so instead I'm going to show off my BBC shop exclusive Series 8 Stevie Blu-ray cover. Ooh. Which, if you press there, yeah, you see, those of you with a normal box set, you don't get that, do you? Unfortunately, it's already slightly battered after just a couple of weeks. The soundbar doesn't quite perfectly fit in the box in this, at least in this version. I don't know if it got a bit damaged in the post, so it's not quite as impressive as it seems. Which should almost be a summation of a Peter Capaldi TV era. Capaldi, of course, probably the most famous of the new series Doctors before he was cast, even more so than Eccleston. He was just coming off a big, successful TV series with the thick of it. Effectively, this is him doing a William Hartnell. It's an attempt to escape from typecasting. You can sort of tell how typecast he was, that within minutes of his casting being announced, there were about 5 million what if the Doctor said fuck a lot spoof videos on YouTube. So obviously, even beyond Capaldi being a big Doctor Who fan, being cast in a children's TV show after becoming famous as a man who says fuck, shit, cunt repeatedly, it's a good career move for him, a very sensible one. But of course, he is a big Doctor Who fan as well. He was actually even trumps David Tennant and his fanishness by being at one point head of the John Pertwee fan club, or director of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, or one of those sort of early 70s clubs anyway. Fact that he's a big bit of a Pertwee fan, you can sort of tell throughout the series. There's a lot of Pertwee in it, but generally in a good way, the best of Pertwee, rather than his more annoying qualities. So sort of from terms of being a fan and in terms of the next career move, being Doctor Who was a very sensible step for him to take. Of course, he's regarded as one of the UK's best actors, so from a casting perspective, it's a entirely sensible move as well. There's the fact he's been in the show twice before, which it's not a huge problem in and of itself, but overall, you know, he's the third series regular to have been cast after being in the show previously, after Freema and Karen, but maybe others as well that have just slipped my mind there. If you consider the fact that sort of thing only happened twice in the original series. 3 times, sorry. You had Harry, of course, Ian Martin had been in the show before, Colin Baker had been in the show before, and Peter Purvis. So in sort of 26 years, you had the same number of, we'll just get that person we've had in before and liked, as the new series has done in 10. Which almost, it feels slightly lazy, and as if Andy Pryor on the casting side of things isn't casting his net wide enough, possibly. Not that there's any real problem with any of those castings, so that's not a huge issue, but who knows who we could have missed out on in any roles if people had been us looking at folks they'd worked with before and liked. With Capaldi himself, fantastic, solid choice. I knew him best as the Angel Islington in Neverwhere. The famously disappointing Neverwhere. I quite like it though. Patterson Joseph is still, I think, someone who would make a brilliant Doctor. It's almost a shame that when people talk about a Black Doctor now, they seem to have moved on to Idris Elba as their number one choice. Presumably because he's a black British actor Americans have heard of, which just seems to be more about how they nominate people. Sort of they've only heard of two black British actors, and he's the one with the easiest name to say, so they tend to come up with him a lot. I personally think Idris probably wouldn't be that good as a Doctor. He's he'd probably be, at least based on his previous performances, he's a sort of straight down the line, traditionally heroic, tormented character. You don't really get much of the eccentric vibe from him. Maybe he can do that, and it'd be a chance to show more variety and range, but you don't really get that feeling from his previous performances. But we're not here to talk about the potential first Black Doctor. It's Peter Capaldi. Bit of a diversion there. The thing with the Capaldi season is that after all the problems with the Matt Smith years, on the surface it seems as if they've got things back on track. There's basically the same number of episodes they were doing before. There's one less, apparently that's a result of having to budget for Day of the Doctor. They had to sort of sacrifice an episode from Capaldi's first 2 years. The writing seems more assured. There's less stories of behind the scenes trouble, just sort of the usual fans stirring things with their big wooden spoon stuff. Claims of arguments between Capaldi and Moffat seem incredibly unlikely, unlike a lot of stories about the Matt Smith era, which seemed reasonably plausible. Things seem to be moving at a good, reasonable pace. And the episodes are good. You know, I would say of season 8, they're all enjoyable. It's one of the most consistent season of New Who. Deep Breath is a fantastic opening episode for the Doctor. Probably only second to the 11th hour in terms of first episodes for the new series Doctors. Fantastic pace, rattles along. Love the Paternoster Gang. Brilliant debut from Capaldi, and it looks like it's going to give a solid foundation to the series. The perhaps warning sign is that it's reusing ideas from Girl in the Fireplace. It acknowledges that and effectively turns it into a sequel, but that is something that does happen a lot across the season. With the very next episode, Into the Dalek. It's a contractual obligation Dalek episode. Apparently, and again, whether this has any substantial basis to it, I'm not sure, but the claim is that because of their contract with the Nation Estates, they have to do a Dalek episode, or at least have Daleks in the season every year, which is why one randomly turns up in Waters and Mars. It's why there's one in The Wedding and River Song, just to sort of meet those we have to have a Dalek moments. And that it certainly feels like that. We better have the Doctor fight the Daleks. He has to fight the Daleks. We have to use them at least once in a year. It's just a less engaging rewrite of Dalek. Not the same ideas, but with the slightly dull miniaturisation stuff, which the show doesn't quite have a budget to pull off. Them walking around the entire of a Dalek basically looks like we're walking about corridors. There's nothing especially interesting in it. Of all that, with Fantastic Voyage stuff being shrunk down like that, the fun is of seeing people within a giant body. You don't really get any sense of that at all in this episode. It's just quite placid. The Dalek fight at the end feels less engaging. It is interesting in that they are trying to get as many Daleks into the crowd as they can, but they don't use any of the fat Daleks. Pretty much a tacit acknowledgement that those are never going to be seen again now in TV Who. And it just feels a bit flaccid, and been there, seen that, even though it's watchable and it's it's certainly the weakest episode of that season. Comfortably better than most of the episodes in the last Matt Smith season still though, but there's just that sense of, yeah, you've done this. And of course the argument there is that Dalek was 9 years before, whole new generation of kids are growing up, it's okay to repeat yourself once in 9 years, but then that's an argument you have to use a lot across this season. With Maybe of the Orient Express, which is probably my favourite episode of the year. Not necessarily the best, but it's the one I enjoy the most. It's huge fun. But the whole early 20th century luxury vehicle famously associated with death in space, they did that in Voyage of the Damned. And again, Voyage of the Damned was, 7 years before? You can repeat yourself once in 7 years, but the accumulative effects. The Cybermen story, the Master is doing a plot that's going to turn everybody into an identical monster. That's effectively the same as the Master's last appearance 4 years previously. Only it's less interesting. At least everybody being turned into John Sim. That was a completely insane idea and quite attention-grabbing. Everybody being turned into a Cyberman. They've done that before as well. Last Christmas is one of the worst offender for this because, Last Christmas, it's it's a dream episode any TV series has ever done. It's the episode of Buffy with her in the Asylum, it's the episode of Star Trek Next Generation with Riker in the Asylum, it's the episode of The X-Files where they're on the field trip and the mushrooms make them hallucinate, sort of any episode where they wake up and then 5 minutes later they go, oh, it was a dream all along that we were already in and it's silly, oh, it's another dream. The only reason in that episode that Michael Troughton goes, it's a bit like Alien, is to try to stop people at home going, it's a bit like Nightmare on Elm Street. But that episode's also, it's just something that the new series has done with Amy's Choice. And that's from the same production team and the same writer. It's a Terry Nation thing. Of the shameless recycling. And that is a point where I thought, it's a very well done episode, very enjoyable episode. Nick Frost is great in it. Probably not the most memorable of the specials because that whole idea has been done a lot, but it does feel like he's run out of ideas there. And of course, the bit other problem is that, is Father Christmas real? Idea had been done earlier that same season with Robin Hood. And the Robin Hood episode does the idea better and in a more interesting way because Robin Hood, the twist is, Robin Hood was real and exactly like he is in the stories. We can do that because, it's Doctor Who. Doctor Who isn't real. So we don't have to be historically accurate. It's all true. The Christmas one, even with the end, or is it, bit with the Clementine at the end, does go, no, there's a technobabble science fiction explanation for why they're hanging around with Father Christmas. It's far less interesting and far less engaging. Ironically, because Mark Gatiss gets a lot of stick for being safe and predictable with his stories, he does that idea much better with his episode. And there are other little things throughout the year as well. Sort of is that sense of, you've done that before, and you've done that before. And it's a certain feeling of a lack of freshness there. However well made it is, and it is very well made, As I said, I think Robot of Sherbert is actually the most imaginative episode of the season because it has fun with the celebrity historical idea, slightly sends it up and subverts it. It's very, very silly, but it's engagingly silly and entertaining, and Ben Miller is fantastic in it, as is the bloke playing Robin Hood. Listen is a fantastically scary episode. Maybe it does feel a bit Moffat by numbers again as well. The whole idea of an unseen monster that may or may not exist. That's basic. If it had been the Silence that turned out to be standing behind him doing all this, it would not have been a surprise. It's a very spooky episode that works quite well. Time Heist, nice fun stuff. Again, a lot of shows do the heist caper episode, but Keeley Hawes covers a multitude of sins, and the idea that the teller was actually a nice monster was a good twist. It's sort of let down by the fact it would have been more surprising if the architect had been anybody other than the Doctor. That was like obvious from the moment the episode started, but it's still okay. Kill the Moon seems to have come in for a lot of slack, but I quite enjoyed that one. Again, yes, the ending is very, very silly, considering up to that point it's quite a serious episode. Perhaps that does work against it somewhat. The mood shift to go from the Doctor leaving Clara alone to decide the fate of all of humanity to it's a giant space dragon who somehow lays an egg that's bigger than itself. Gear change, that isn't smoothly done, but I still quite enjoy that. The Caretaker, bit of a rehash of a lodger, but it's okay. It just feels a bit cheap with a monster. And there's slightly comes to the fact that Danny is entirely right in that one. If you're going to have a conflict between the Doctor and Danny, they need to be on more of a level pegging. But, Danny is entirely right in his attitude of, this strange guy is going around doing stuff at the school, I better put a stop to that. The Doctor going, oh, you've interfered with my plans. Where's your own fault for being so secretive and dishonest about it? If Danny acted in the entirely right way there, so it's oddly skewered against the Doctor, that story. But there is a sort of Forest of the Night, which is okay. It's got some nice visuals with trees and all that, but it's one of those after I watch it, it's pretty much gone from my mind. But again, it's not a bad episode. Just to stress, there are no really outright bad episodes in this season for what is probably the first time in New Who's history. Indeed, there's probably not been a season as generally solid as this in the entire run of the series. One thing I did talk about in the last video is Clara. Too much, because obviously I was talking about with Bev Smith here and all these returning Doctors there. And generally this year she's handled much better. She's a highlight. The big problem with Clara in the back end of season 7 is that they felt obliged to give her backstory in her family, but in order for the mystery of her to work, what is she, you couldn't really spend much time on that. There had to be a bit of ambiguity as to what she really was. So she ended up being a nanny to this dad of his kids who were woefully underdeveloped. I can't even remember the name of the dad, or even if he had a name. And that's a sort of big centrepiece of her life, but it never feels very engaging. They got ditched very quickly after that because the special gave her a actual family, and tellingly of those only her gran ever returned because the new actor played her dad. And the stepmom, they feel like, in that dinner scene in Time of the Doctor, they feel like three people who have never been in the same room as each other before in their lives. And Clara living on a council estate doesn't feel quite right for her slightly posh northern character. So season 8 basically scrubbed all that as well, apart from Nan, and started again. Telling her original plan to just look after the kids of our family and then go explore the world, which is sort of a perfect backstory for a Doctor Who companion wanting to go off into time and space. All of that's been forgotten as well. She's become a teacher. She's sort of slightly random backstory changes, but it actually works now. Her caring and being involved with the kids, her relationship with Danny works. I like that dynamic that they have. I think he's a slightly underrated character, actually, Danny Pink. He was great, gave a good performance, and was great value as a sort of solid, serious basis for the show. Be concerned for Clara, but still letting her make her own choices. Not liking being lied to by her, but not denying her the rights to lead the life that she wants. That was a very nice balance. And you've ended up feeling a lot of sympathy for him. And rather neatly, even though Clara's not usually sympathetic in her treatment to him and lying to him, you still like her as you still feel on her side, and that was very nicely done. So sort of a companion dynamic is much better this year. She works very well with Capaldi. Capaldi himself is great as well. One thing that really annoys me, and I think deserves to be talked about a bit, is people who moan about how hard it is to understand him, or the accent. We've had a Scottish doctor before, and he's far more comprehensible than Sylvester McCoy, God bless Sylvester. I mean, particularly there's one letter in SFX, somebody wrote in, complaining, saying the doctor should not have an accent at all, which is, of course, utterly ludicrous. I don't know what that person was thinking, because I hate to break it to you, the English accent is an accent. And if you have trouble understanding a Scottish person, that's more an issue with you than with anything to do with the Scottish person. He's perfectly comprehensible. God knows what would happen if we had somebody from around where I am, a black country doctor. That would probably make these people's head explode. So that's an unfair criticism of him, and generally he's a lot funnier than people gave him credit for. And there was lots of about how dark the show had become, but he's fantastic at slapstick and perfectly comfortable with being a bit silly, but still plays the serious stuff very well. It's just a lovely performance throughout the entire year. Where things go a bit odd is in the final of the season. Now, I quite enjoyed this at the time when it first went out, probably because, unlike the 3 previous Moffat end of season finals, it's got a different plot. It's not the same thing. It actually feels quite nice that the threat is only to Earth for once, rather than all of space and time. And indeed, it turns out to be quite a low-key thing that the Master is missing. Well, I'll come to that in a minute. Apologise. I think it's probably slightly unfair to refer to her by her old name. Just force of habit of it being the character's name for so long. So it felt fresh, and it felt a bit thankfully different. And I love that indeed still love a Brigadier thing. That is utterly mental, completely insane, yet lovely. But when watching it again, it just feels kind of placid and just it's a stupid 2 hours of television. Very little of it is thought through properly. I mean, what is going on with Osgood? You know, a lot of people were very upset when Osgood died. I was quite delighted by the time she eventually got killed, because she was a complete utter idiot. That entire sequence is horribly contrived and badly written. First off, why is Osgood doing her work on the PC in the same room that Missy is locked up in? Do Unit not have a helicopter, an airplane big enough that there's an office in there she can work at? That seemed quite bad for security. Secondly, they know that Missy is the Master, or at least Osgood knows, and she's enough of a fanboy to know what that person is like, a master hypnotist who always escapes from Eunice. She's then stupid enough to go talk to Missy and not expect to be mesmerised. It's just one of the guards behind them doing at that point. It's just lazy, stupid and idiotic writing, and there is a lot of that in this story. The Cybermen, it's the ultimate endpoint of their degeneration that's been going on across the new series, arguably across their entire time in Doctor Who, where they've now reached a point where what is officially the second most famous monster is now a lackey of the third most famous monster. They're just generic. There is no reason for them to be Cyberman. If Missy was turning all the corpses into an army of zombies, it would be the same story. If she was turning them into duplicates of herself again, it would be the same story. There's not a team up between Missy and Cybermen. It's Missy has these robots that work for her. They could be anybody. They could be anything. There's nothing especially Cyberman-ish about them that makes it worthwhile to include them, just for the sake of redoing the St. Paul's Cathedral thing, which is sort of weird that actually get homage redone, really. You can't imagine them doing the Daleks on Westminster Bridge again. That is enough of an iconic moment by itself. That it would be odd if a TV series were to do that. So it's strange that they would go and do Daleks marching down St. Paul's. Of course, well, fair enough, they were filming in central London. There was no way they were going to keep Cybermen a secret, so they might as well have made some capital of it. But the first episode is all about, what's going on with corpses? Oh, it's Cyberman! But everybody knew weeks beforehand it was going to be Cybermen. It sort of falls down flat. And however much that may not have been possible to avoid, it's still a problem with the episode. Sort of the only real highlight is the Danny Pink stuff. Where you can argue he's been a bit selfish for putting his own interests above that of the Earth, but he's in a pretty bad place, so I think he can be forgiven for not being completely altruistic at the end there. And he gets a good send-off, but other than that, it's just of a story. The only real other highlight is Missy herself. A lot of fuss beforehand about gender swapping the Master. Both people are making arguments for and against. I think the most sensible argument for and against is that making, it's slightly diminishing your female characters if you have to turn a male one into a woman to have a strong female character, rather than just creating new strong female characters, or even using Varani. I think we will never see Varani again now. It's strange how well remembered Varani is, actually, because people seem to remember Kate O'Mara being in the show and being an evil Time Lord, and it comes up as a rumour in the press a lot. It definitely won't happen now, because Varani is just a Master, but with a more narrow field of scientific interests. You couldn't put Varani in every Master story, but the Master could be in every Varani story, and now the Master is a woman, Varani is completely redundant. She will never ever return, unless at some point the Master becomes a man again, which is always possible, of course. Regeneration presumably can go both ways. But sort of that's, I think, is the sort of only real argument against doing it. I suppose the other camp was also the fact that if you view it as a transgender situation, having your transgender character be the crazy, nutty psychopath is possibly somewhat offensive. Personally, though, I don't view it as a transgender analogy. I just go with it being a casting thing, pure and simple. Don't think about logic and regeneration at all, ever. It has never made any sense. It's just an excuse to get a different actor in. In this case, it just happens to be a different actor of a different gender. And Michelle Gomez is great. Generally, I'm not a fan of a completely mad Master. I would like a return of a sort of Roger Delgado, slightly smoother, slightly more credible as a threat Master. But if you're going to have a Master who's all, I'm crazy me, she knows how to play it, and she plays it very well, much better than John Sim did. Hugely entertaining, great fun, plays off Peter Capaldi very well. I'm glad the character's going to be back next year. I just hope it's in a better story. That sort of is Capaldi's first year in a nutshell. Generally enjoyable. And again, even I've just been putting the boot into the final two-parter, it's still watchable. It's sort of only when you start thinking about it in depth it falls apart. But when compared to some of the previous season finals where it falls apart as you're watching it, that is an improvement. Sort of after saying I thought it was the strongest season, I've sort of been fairly negative on quite a bit of it there. So it's worth emphasising how generally watchable and enjoyable and likeable this year is for those flaws. They sort of don't work too much against the show, but it does leave you with a feeling of it's time for Moffat to move on. If he left after this season, it would have been a bit of a highlight for him. Him carrying on into at least for next year, hopefully things won't start going backwards again, it will keep going forwards. That is always a hope, of course, but that is something we won't know till the autumn. And there's already been sort of promises about how Capaldi's going to be funnier and lighter and less dark. We just feel like backtracking a bit, but hopefully it won't be too much of that. Because I think they established a very good Doctor there. But sort of that's the enigma at this point. That's where we don't know what's going to happen next. So that's always the exciting thing about Doctor Who, that it never will end. It took me over 2 years to get to Last Christmas. At the time I started, Matt Smith, I think, was still in his old costume. We hadn't seen his new outfit yet. His original tweeds were still what the Doctor looked like. We've come a long way since then. The show's completely reinvented itself, recast itself. Still working great guns. You know, people were creating worrying signs about ratings, but with the iPlayer and all that other stuff took into account, it's basically the same as it ever was. Exciting, dynamic, going forward. It will never end. That's brilliant, and it makes it always exciting to be a fan, even when the show has an occasional bad or dodgy year. The fact there'll always be new creative teams coming in to bring fresh eyes will always keep you watching. And here's to the next 50 years of Doctor Who and all the unknown and exciting adventures that are to come. At my next video review, that's going to be Doctor Who related, will be on Torchwood. There'll probably be some Transformers video stuff before then. And I do hope you'll all keep looking at the website, at the Solar Pool, and keep on watching and keep on reading. The book, based on my website, will hopefully be ready to go within the next month or so, so keep an eye out for that. And go out there and enjoy the nice and unexpectedly good summer weather, and I'll speak to you all soon.